Okay, so first of all, just as a way of introduction, my name's Paul Kahn. I'm just a lad from Anfield. I've been going to match for 50 years. Cop season ticket holder for 41 years. I've seen the triumphs, I've seen, sadly, the tragedies. And I'm really proud and honoured to be the chair of this great union. So that's the introduction, really, just to say a little bit about who I am. Our vision is to be the strongest, most inclusive and effective supporters union in the world. And that's underpinned by Shankly's values of dignity, integrity, respect, solidarity. You might think to yourself, well, that's a bit of a bold statement, a bit of a bold vision statement. But if you actually think about the great man himself, he said, I want to bloody conquer the world. He wants Liverpool to conquer the world. And I'm sure that if Bill was still around now, he'd be saying the aspiration for the union should be that we're the best union in the world. So I think the vision statement's correct. I do think we're probably the strongest and most effective supporters union. You look at all the different campaigns that have been launched in a 15-year tenure. You look at Alston, Hicks and Gillette. You look at our support in 1906 on the 77 walkout, like to reverse that main stand price increase. You look at the fight for justice after we were playing for the Paris debacle and Spirit of Shankly stood up. I want to emphasise that campaigning is at the heart of everything that Spirit of Shankly do, and basically it will always remain so. So where are we now? Well, we've got a new constitution. Things have moved on. The constitution hasn't been revisited for a long time, and we felt it needed to be. Obviously, there's the advent of the supporters board. There's been changes in the way we're working, and so the constitution needed to be updated to reflect that. And George will talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. We've restructured the management committee to make it more efficient and effective. We've created working groups with different areas of specialism, so things like ticketing, community, match day experience, preserving a match day culture. In terms of inclusivity, we've created a surveying system which you've probably seen. It's really important. The management committee is just here to represent you. Every single voice basically is important as another voice, and we need to ask basically when there's certain topics which we deem important, what your views are and how you want us to represent. So a good example of that is when we asked about should we be campaigning to reduce ticket prices, and 92.1% of the membership come back and said, yeah, we should be. So we approached the club via the supporters board, and unfortunately they wouldn't basically engage in dialogue and said the 2% increase, like on general admission and season tickets, is stuck, and that's the way it is. And obviously we raised our displeasure. The club have now said basically that they will engage with dialogue with the supporters board moving forward for next season. But we also wanted to protest, and if you remember rightly, 1906 organised the withdrawal of flags and banners at the Atlanta game, and we supported that, which I thought was right to do. It was the only way we could show the club about our displeasure. But we've moved on from that in relation to, we thought to ourselves, we need to take it one step further. So as a management committee, we thought we'll create a motion, we'll raise a motion with the Football Supporters Association, and that's what we did at their AGM. A motion that focuses on basically freezing or reducing ticket prices, preserving a match day culture, gaining more access for young people. And that was passed by the Premier League clubs. And you may have noticed when you've gone the game, you know, we collaborated with West Ham fans at the League Cup match. They've been hit quite severely with concessions being removed, and as a show of solidarity, we stood with them. Obviously, the campaign's called Stop Exploiting Loyalty. I should have said that, I apologise. And obviously, we campaigned against when we played Brighton as well. And you'll see protests right across the Premier League grounds all season, because it's not just affecting us, it's affecting every club. Like price increases, you know, it's just completely exponential in relation to, you know, 1992, it's gone up 800% for a season ticket, which is just incredible. And we can't allow that to continue. And what I'd say is that when we're doing these protests, if you're at the game, please join us, like, because unity is strength, and it's a show of solidarity. Again, in terms of inclusion, because inclusion is important, we reached out when we've got management committee vacancies. We've had a look basically like at what the strengths of the management committee are and thought, where do we need to basically strengthen? And we've created role profiles which we sent out to all the members, because, you know, there's so many people here and so many members. I don't know basically what you can do or what you can't do. There's an unbelievable talent pool out there, and we need to tap into your knowledge and understanding and expertise. And we were delighted that we received 20 applications, but I think we had 4 vacancies, and fortunately enough, we got Brian to join, we got Helen, who's over there, we got Neil. But the best thing was as well is the fact that the people who were unsuccessful, they didn't sulk, basically, they turned around and said, look, what can we do basically to support the union? And they've gone and joined the different working groups that we've created, and George will talk about the working groups so you can actually see what they are. After me. So on to diversity. I can't say that we're great at diversity, if I'm totally honest. Like, you'll notice basically when you join the union, we don't ask any questions about protected characteristics or anything like that, so we haven't got a clue in relation to people disabled or the LGBTQ or the BMA, and that's something that maybe we need to think about what we do when people join. We've got an EDI working group now, and basically we're looking at developing a new policy and action plan. But also we need to reach out to other organisations that sit on the supporters board who've got more expertise than us. So people like Harinder Singh's Faith and Ethnicity, the LDSA, Paula Mann's Cop-Outs. I always use a quote by a bluesologist called Gil Scott-Heron. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And by working together, we all become stronger. So I'll move on to community work. Our community work is going great, and we've really increased it. The pantry that we deliver in partnership with Fan Support and Food Banks, and the Greenhouse Project, which I'll talk about later, is flourishing. Whether that's a good thing or whether that's a bad thing, I don't know. You know, it's terrible that in this day and age that people have to use a mobile pantry, food bank. Fan Support and Food Bank's vision is to eradicate food poverty, and you know that aligns with the type of thing that we think as well as Spirit of Shankly. We don't want to see anybody going hungry. Peter, who's sitting here next to me, he leads on our community work, and he's done fantastic work in engaging young people in our field through music, arts and drama classes. We've also set up a debt and welfare advice in partnership with Vauxhall Law Centre and delivered through Home Baked. And the Shankly Cup's back, thanks to, I don't think he's here, Steve Monaghan. And that's linking the communities and young people of Liverpool and East Ayrshire, visiting Glenbuck, Shankly's home, and Liverpool people going up because Liverpool was a spiritual home. What have I got to talk about now? Hold on. No, that should be on the next slide. But anyway, that doesn't matter. Financially, we're in a good position, and Gron is going to talk through the finances later on. I just wanted to say a word as well about something that goes under the radar, the fact that we're all volunteers. We all try our very best. Like, and the amount of daily sort of requests that we get in terms of individuals' ticketing issues, banning orders, media requests, and we try to respond to it in the best way we possibly can. And I just want to put a bit of a shout out to a few of the management committee members who really do a lot of work in that area. Steph Jones and Anna Burgess, I hope you're listening. The likes of Jay McKenna, Keith Culvin does a lot of work on banner orders. Roy does fantastic work helping people, and also does a brilliant job running the away coach service with Mark Sewell. So yeah, we really thank you for that this day-to-day work that you do, like, which tends to go unnoticed. So where are we heading, and basically how do we get there? So one of the things that we want to do is have a membership drive. We want to increase our membership. It gives us a stronger bargaining position basically when we're in the club. We're healthy in terms of membership, but we're not the biggest in terms of unions, because a lot of unions basically offer free membership, and that's something that we'll be exploring. Obviously, it's only because of you and the money that comes in basically through the paying members, and we'd like to increase the paying members because that helps us basically sustain like our campaigning work and our community work. So that's really important. We've got a fantastic communications group who do great work, but that's been strengthened by we've managed to bring in Gareth Roberts, an excellent journalist, and we want to in terms of our social media sort of profile, we don't use things like, I don't use any of this, by the way, Instagram, TikTok and all that stuff, so hopefully Gareth's going to help us basically become more active there, raising our profile through the media in terms of TV, radio, both locally, nationally and internationally. What we also need is an easy-to-read manifesto. Obviously, I hope that you read the Constitution, but it's not the easiest read in the world. We need a manifesto which is easy to read, which says who we are, what we do, why we do it, how can you join, what are the benefits basically for joining. So we're in the process of developing that, and hopefully you'll see that over the coming months. The supporters board. The supporters board is our vehicle basically to gain access to decision makers at the club. We need to make sure that basically our priorities, ticketing, access, preserving the match day culture are prominent, like on the agenda, that we're pushing that agenda. You've got to remember that Spirit of Shankly formed the supporters board and signed the Articles of Association, so we need to make sure our priority areas are addressed with the supporters board. And we've got a new chair in Jay McKenna, who I think is going to do a fantastic job. And yeah, so Jay will be talking a little bit more about the supporters board. Partnerships and collaboration. We've developed some great relationships. Joe Blott, basically the previous chair to me, has developed some great strategic relationships with the FSA and ESA. Closer to home, we've developed relationships with the likes of Red All Over the Land, with John over there, Vauxhall Law Centre, Fan Support and Food Banks, Home Baked, the church pub, like where we run all our activities. And that's really good. And what we need to be doing is looking out for other organisations who share our same values as us and ethos, and bringing them together. Because when we come together as one, we're stronger. It's like what I said before, and I'll just repeat it. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. So, you know, I think the banner on the cop sums it up, really. Unity is strength. And which I'm going to stop gabbering in a second, so I'm sorry if I've gone on a little bit, but I think it's been important to get some key points across. I don't wear like football merchandise and all that type of stuff. I have a little silly red and white hat that I wear in the winter. My wife says I need a carer. But I've worn this T-shirt today. It's another banner that flies on a cop. Support and believe. And I think those words are really important. We really appreciate your support, and we're here to support you as well. And I hope you believe in what the union are trying to do, because we believe in you. And if we support and believe, to me, we'll then achieve. So I'd like to thank you for your time. Unfortunately, you've got to listen to me again when I'm talking about communities and stuff, but I'm going to hand over to George to talk about the Constitution, and you'll never walk alone, and thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to talk a lot more briefly and in not a lot of detail about the Constitution. Everybody should have had a copy of the Constitution. I'm sure you've all read it and enjoyed it. The Constitution is the rule book by which the union organises itself and decides and does what it does. The original Constitution was put in place in 2008, and obviously since 2008 a huge number of things have changed, although some things remain the same. Perhaps not for the best, Jay might think, but Jay was one of the original signatories in 2008 and he's still here today. So I suspect we must be doing something right. So the new Constitution is an update. It's not changing the world, it's just updating things. And we brought a number of things in, some of which Paul has referenced, but we brought in some guiding principles that set the foundation for how we think about things and how we make decisions, the Shankly values and the cooperative, the internationally recognised cooperative values and principles, which we think should always be there as a reference point whenever we're making a decision or whenever we're thinking about anything. We've updated our aims and objects, which is what we do. And essentially, as Paul said, we're here to represent you, the members. Everything we do is about what our members want us to do. And the updated objects and aims really clarify and bring into focus exactly what it is we're trying to do constantly, what we're trying to do in the short, medium and long term, and sets it all out in detail. And that's the boring reference point, which we will then turn into the manifesto that Paul talked about, which then takes our story out to hopefully increase our membership so we've got a bigger mandate. The second thing we've had to update the Constitution to reflect is the Supporters Board. That's a very big change for us because it's a separate agreement, but it's important to note that Spirit of Shankly brought the Supporters Board into existence, and Spirit of Shankly invited other people into the room, but we still control the Supporters Board. So the Supporters Board, as Paul said, is about us taking to the club, with the structured dialogue that the Supporters Board agreement sets out with the club, what our members want. But we need to have that in our Constitution to say, how do we do that and who does that? So we've had to change the Constitution for that. Since the union was formed in 2008, the union was essentially formed on the back of, let's do something about Hicks and Gillette. As Paul has mentioned, the amount of things we now do, and I'll talk about that in a minute on a slide, but the amount of things we now do and the number of areas we now affect has increased a huge amount. And so the Constitution now needs to reference how we go about doing that and the structure and organisation that allows us to do that. And then finally, the laws changed. In 2014, there was a new act, a new Cooperative Benefits Society Act, and our Constitution needs to reflect that new act. So we've also had to change to reflect that. At this point, I wonder, are there any questions about the Constitution? Has anybody read it and thought, oh, I need to understand that, or I need to know that? No? I wasn't expecting any, but just in case. So the process or the next steps for the Constitution are, we vote it in now, I hope. We then give it to the FCA. The FCA then ratify our vote and say, yeah, we accept that Constitution, which we expect them to do, because we've gone through a process with the cooperative societies who work with the FCA. Once they ratify it, it's then adopted, and that then becomes the set of rules by which we operate to deliver for our members. So if there are no questions and no objections, I'd like to propose a vote that everybody in favour raise their hand so we can put the Constitution to the FCA as being accepted by the membership. All in favour? Well, I think that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Paul also asked me to talk a little bit about this, and if you don't mind, I'll just stand up for this bit. So, I mentioned there that organisationally the union's changed. Paul asked me to just talk a little bit about how we changed and how we structured. For my sins, I'm part of the planning group that sits in the back office and organises how the union tries to do what it does for its membership. And this chart put together by John Nico tries to explain that a little bit. So I just want to talk a little bit about this, primarily so everybody can understand a little bit of what we do and how we do it, but also so people can see how they might get involved if they'd like to get involved. Ultimately, we're a member-led organisation, so it starts with the membership, and there are a number of levels of membership. So there's paid membership. There's also now going to be a free membership. The difference is, as a paid member, you can vote and you can get involved. As a free member, you don't get a vote. Some other benefits attached, but principally that. But we want to grow our membership to have a greater mandate, and we want to get more paid members, but we're also going to have a free membership. From that membership, the management committee is then elected. So everybody who is on the management committee, and there are 15 of us, is elected by you, the members. The way the management committee then organises itself is a chair, a vice chair, a secretary, so certain elected positions, and then we have a number of work groups, which you can see here. So I'm not going to read through them all, but primarily there are club-facing work groups, so match day experience, ticketing, sanctions, travel, things that involve fans every day and things that we're continually talking to the club about. And I just want to echo what Paul said. I've been involved now for a couple of years on the management committee, and it astounds me how much people like Roy, Jay, Steph, Anna actually manage to do dealing with the club every day on ticketing, on fan queries, on banners, on travel, on away tickets, on credits, on all of those things. There's an astounding amount of volume of work goes in there, never mind all the bigger things that we do. In order to deal with all that stuff, we're split into all these different groups. All those groups are chaired by someone from the management committee, and then we have support groups, which are essentially people who say, I don't want to get involved with the day-to-day, I don't want to get involved with the management committee, but I'd like to help. Can I support in some way, whether that's a specific skill like marketing or just helping out and volunteering? We also then have an advisory group, which is typically people who've been involved somewhere and then said, I want to stand back, but sit in the background to advise. And then finally, from the management committee, all the advisory group, all members, we have people who are elected to the supporters board. And the way that works is you can put your hand up and say, I'd like to be on the supporters board, and you're elected by the management committee. So that's how we operate, or that's how we try to operate to get everything done that we try to do for our members. Any questions on that, or that's me finished? No, thank you very much. I'll hand over now to, is it Gron, Treasurer's Report next? Oh, sorry, Jay, Supporters Board.
Thanks, George. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. I'll just give a brief overview really of the Supporters Board, but I'm happy to take questions really if people have got them. I'm sure, well, I would certainly rather hear from any of you who've got questions rather than me talking at you for a particular length of time. As Paul said, there's been some changes at the Supporters Board, so I was really pleased, honestly, that I was brought back in and I'm picking up the role of chair on the Supporters Board. A big thanks to Joe, who done that role for the last couple of years, in the first 2 years of the Supporters Board's inception. And there are new Supporters Board members. There's been some changes from the Spirit of Shankly representatives on there. So at the last meeting, big thanks to Mark Johnson and Graham Manley who've come off the supporters board, Keith Culver and Brian Pickstock who've come onto it, joining the other SOS representatives on there. And it is an opportunity for us to have our voice heard. But it's an opportunity to work with those other groups Paul said before, whether it be Cop Out, Spine Cop 1906, the LDSA, the LSE Women's Supporters Group, the overseas supporter clubs who are represented on there, or Harinder Singh, who represents faith and ethnicity and is setting up an organisation to represent supporters on that basis. It's an opportunity for us to talk to other supporters about the issues they face or those their groups want to bring, but also that the issues we want to talk about and the issues that maybe are on the agenda tonight, and you'll hear Kieran Maguire talk about and that supporters have been talking about for the last couple of days when it talks about member sales. They're all the same issues that affect them, because at its core we are just Liverpool supporters going the game. We know people who are affected by these things. You might be affected by them yourself, but we all are on the same page when it comes to things like ticket pricing and access to tickets for supporters. And it's important, and it's our vehicle to get those issues heard, as Paul said. So we have been, if you look at the last minute of the last supporters board, you know, talking to the club about quite important issues, ones that people are always talking to us about. The club is reviewing memberships, and they've spoke about that, and they've asked for a small group of supporter board representatives to start having conversations with them about that, in part because if you actually looked at the chart they showed us, there's about 19 different versions of kind of memberships or subscriptions you can have at the club, and they want to simplify those. But then what that means for price, what does that mean for access for tickets? They're saying that won't change, but rightly so. People want to buy memberships so they can maybe get a ticket. There's a big issue around matchday experience, what people experience going in and out of the ground, and Roy, who leads the matchday experience forum, brought a number of issues to the club, and they want to talk to people about that, whether that be where people sit in the ground, sitting near to people, you know, that they know, friends or family. You know, that really does help the atmosphere, how we get more young people into the ground. What we might do basically to help, you know, continue to provide the atmosphere that if you've been in the ground for the last 3 games or you've read about it, you know, does have a material impact on the success of the team and in turn the football club. So that's particularly important. And ticketing is the big one, isn't it? You know, we've been talking to the club, and as Paul said, they've committed to meaningful engagements on that, and we'll be wanting to talk to the club early in the new year about ticket pricing ahead of that being announced in March. And our, you know, unsurprising, you know, breaking news, we think football tickets are too expensive. We think they should go down. The club wants to grow its revenues. You know, the discussions are going to be about where there might be some compromise on that, and we'll be engaging with them on that in a really positive way. But there are issues to come. The club have recently conducted the ticketing survey. They're going to start working through the results. We had a brief conversation with them on that the other day. They've had a decent number of responses, beginning to kind of identify what the key issues are in those. I'm sure we could all guess at what they'd be. But, you know, we want to talk to them about that. We want to use what people have said to inform decisions. You know, it's not just about what I think on tickets or what you in this room thinks on tickets. The supporters board is an opportunity for all supporters to have a say. And how do we engage with them on that? So the club's done a survey. We are going to be looking, I think, as a union and as an organisation to make sure we're reaching out to people, hearing what people have got to say. And, you know, I know if you look at the issues of the last couple of days, around the member sales, you know, people think, oh, you know, because you haven't said something or it hasn't changed doesn't mean you're not listening, you don't care. We do. We're listening to what people say, whether that's engaging in WhatsApp groups, whether that's on Twitter, you know, getting the feedback from people who email us about the problems that they faced. We're feeding that into the club, and, you know, they're the kind of things where we'll be in the room with them, talking to them about what the solutions are needed on those. So I'll just skip to the next one to give a little update on some of the little bits that have come up around this. The next one, Brian, if that's okay. I feel like Chris Whitty there. Ticketing, so member sales is the big issue. You know, you don't even need to be in a member sale to imagine the pain it's been through for people going through that in the last couple of days. And if you're in a WhatsApp group or several of them like I are, you know the real pain people have experienced trying to get tickets. It's not acceptable, it's not fair. It needs to change. I think there's staff in the club who feel that way as well. I think if you've wanted to throw your computer out of the window, I think from talking to them, they probably did. But that doesn't fix the problem. And what we need to really engage with them now is what's the solution, because, you know, this has been a persistent problem in the last few sales. So what does that look like? How do we get the feedback from yourselves on these to do that? Pricing is a big issue, but so too is availability of tickets, being able to go the game. You know, how do we get that next generation of supporters in there? You know, if I use my own personal experience to this, I've got a season ticket, brilliant. People would say, you know, you want to protect that, what you've got, but I've got a 4-year-old lad who's at some point going to be getting really excited about going to match. I've got an 8-year-old nephew who loves the idea of going to the game, and when I can get him a spare, but how does he get to go as well? It's not easy. You know, 5 into 4 doesn't go. And we've got a big problem here when I think we think about how we get the next generation in, who misses out. Someone has to miss out. Who is that? How do we decide what's fair? And that's going to be, I think, part of ongoing conversations with the club about a fair process around ticketing, whether that be the sales, whether that be pricing, whether that be access to tickets. We know there are issues game by game for lots of people. Whether it was Arsenal recently, people experiencing problems getting into the ground, and there's ongoing conversations with the club who are investigating that with Arsenal about what happened there. Brighton tickets have come out to people and there was a problem with them. With NFC, we're constantly onto the club very quickly. Almost feels like, if you speak to some of the others involved in this stuff, feel like a customer service arm of the club sometimes. But you know, we are listening to what people are saying to us, so as soon as we see issues, we're onto the club about them. But there are changes coming on ticketing as well, not just at Liverpool. The Premier League has issued a new rule change which will come into effect from 26-27, where all tickets will be digital. That is going to be a significant change for lots of people, mainly at other clubs, but will mean changes for us going to away games as well. And then on the back of that, and the next one on sanctions, as Paul mentioned before, you know, we do, as a supporter group, get lots of people getting in touch with us where they've had a problem on sanctions. We worked with the club quite a while back to actually update and review their sanctions process because it wasn't working effectively. We just want to make sure it's a fair process. We're not saying people, if they've done wrong, shouldn't be kind of held to account by the club for that. But it needs to be a fair process, and too often it wasn't. And sometimes that happens now. Some people aren't hearing back from the club quick enough. They're not getting the information they need. So we do constantly kind of keep on at the club and help people and give them advice and make sure the club are following the steps that they need to do. And to be fair to the staff at the club, they engage with us really well on those things, making sure that's a fair and good process. And we do help people with they come forward on that. And recently, people might have seen the club announced some information on the number of tickets it's taken action on, whether that be accounts or on tickets and bans for people around touting. That's work the club do. We don't get involved in that. But one of the things we always get asked by people, and the club always gets asked by supporters, is, what are you doing on this? What are you doing about these people selling tickets on? What are you doing about people who misuse tickets and all of that stuff? And we have constantly said to the club throughout, the best thing you can do is be transparent and honest. Tell people what you're doing. Tell people what you've done. They might not like the information all of the time, but putting that information out there at least informs supporters. They've done this in the past, and they continue to do this now around European Cup sales and Cup finals. We don't always like where tickets go, but they at least share the information and it helps keep us informed. And we've said to them, on whether it be on sanctions, whether it be on who gets away tickets, who gets European tickets, you know, the breakdown of the crowd in Anfield on any given match day, where do those tickets go? Share that data and be transparent, and that'll be particularly important, I think, in the weeks and months ahead, as maybe decisions or discussions are ongoing around ticket pricing and other things, is that transparency of information. And that's particularly key, and that's what we'll be trying to push for at the supporters board and as a union in the conversations we have with the club. So I'll stop there, and I think you want to take questions after the other stuff, don't you, Paul?
Yeah. Well, I think basically once we've done everything, we'll take any questions that you want.
Fab. Moving on to the finance updates, I'll keep it short and sweet and kind of what actually matters in here rather than kind of going through figures and numbers that don't really mean much to people. The key thing that we're doing is getting sign-off for 2023 and 2024 accounts. The way we think about them is very much split into two areas. There's the core union stuff, and then there's our community side, and we think of them quite separately. On the core union side, that's making sure we have all the funds to fight the campaigns, everything that Jay just talked about, and everything that's gone before in this session. And we're really, really strong on that side, thanks to the work that's been done on memberships to make sure that people renew, the reminders that you get, and keeping that membership strong. And that's the kind of the lifeblood of the union. On the travel side, it's still self-sufficient. I think on about around 40 grand's worth of spend. I think it was £82 difference between what it cost and the revenue it brought in, so the pricing is absolutely spot on that, and the new unit, the kind of delivering travel, the effective travel for supporters at cost is absolutely being achieved. We've also spent that former players fund of £5,000 that we raised at the 10-year anniversary, and helped a couple of players from that Shankly era who needed needed that support. On the community side, without kind of stealing the thunder of what's to come next, all that side started with the Help Us Here campaign at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's grown massively over the years since into a 75 grand program last year, and it's going to be even bigger this year from all the kind of the programs in the Anfield area, the food bank support, legal support, all those kinds of things which will come in the next presentation. But it's a massive part of what the union does now. So kind of the three key takeaways is just to say how the union's never been in a stronger financial position to fund what it needs to do going forward. The resources are there to do everything that is being talked about. The campaigns that from the supporters board side will all be financed, and the union is in a fantastic place to continue supporting the Anfield area and the community programs that we've done for the last 5 years. So, if there's no particular questions, we go to a vote to sign off those 2023 and 2024 accounts. So all in favour? Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, it's me now. So it is a comedy club, isn't it? So, but yeah, I mean, I'm in a very privileged position, and since November 2021, the first initiative we started was with the Vauxhall Law Centre, which is just round the corner here, and we negotiated with Home Baked, which is opposite the COP, to have a welfare rights in there. And since October 23, they've started doing proper look at figures about what's been brought in to the Anfield area. And since October 23 to the present day, it's nearly £500,000 being brought in because people were either on the wrong benefits, on the wrong housing benefits, or for pensioners who didn't have pension credit. So we're very proud of that, because we're thinking, what would Bill Shankly want for this area? You know, we can all see Anfield as a place over the years. Let's say the club hasn't looked after certain aspects of it, but we thought that one thing Shankly'd want to do would be get money back into that area. The other things we've been involved in is the arts club, and Sarah, the tutor's in here tonight, and it's transformed young people's lives. And we've had lots of parents writing in, and they keep on saying incredible, best thing the kids do all week. It's fantastic, and got to congratulate Creative Balance, because it's absolutely fantastic what they're doing. But also we got to mention the church, because the church are giving us that space in the basements of the church, and it's really brilliant what they do. And Sarah said, just read this out: watching the children of Anfield develop over the last year has been a very special project for me. We have children with mixed abilities from different backgrounds and different countries, including refugees. And together each week they laugh, learn and eat together. Not only are their creative sides coming alive, but their social awareness and confidence is also developing without them even noticing. They're learning about art history, the classics and contemporaries, experimenting with different styles and techniques each week. They're creating memories and new positive relationships as a group. And this is so important in their journey ahead into high school and further education. So, and I also like to thank Kev from the church, who every week the kids get a hot meal, which the parents also say is fantastic for them, because it takes the pressure off them, because they're in the church for between 4 and 6 and they get fed as well. We also have music tuition on a Thursday, which is going great guns, and that's for adults and children. And when you go into there, when the kids are learning guitar, that's another thing which, you know, the creative side of them, you can really see they're enjoying it so much, especially the young ones. When you go in, they're all sitting there in the Liverpool kits with the guitars, playing all sorts of songs that you never think they'd be able to play a few weeks before you heard them, you know. And also, we have a drama class, which is on a Thursday as well. And they've also got together with local primary schools. And what I suggested them to do is there's a book called by Peter Lupson, which is about Liverpool and Everton, the split, when they left the Sand and went left Anfield and went to Goodison. So they're going to produce a play, which is going to be on the Lighthouse in Anfield on December the 5th, called Common Ground. And that's about the split between the two clubs. But it's the children's interpretation of that. So we're really looking forward to that as well. Also, we've got to announce that we'd like to thank the 12th man, because the travel is self-sufficient, but there have been grants from the 12th man towards the travel, hasn't there? Last game of the season, and that's really appreciated because it can be a free coach then, you know. Also, let's see. Oh yeah, the Christmas dinner. Can I talk about that? Yeah. We have a Christmas dinner at the church, and it's been running for a couple of years, and that's at least 100 pensioners from the local area come. They're invited. It's free, and it's a free Christmas dinner and a free bar, and that's where your membership money is going, and that's where your donations are going. So I think it's really important that you realise that these memberships mean a lot, and they mean a lot to the local community as well. And I think, are you going to go into a bit more, Paul, about the pantry? Any questions about that? Or I've got loads of testimonies off the parents, but we'll put them in newsletters because they're too long to read, you know. But I'm really proud of what's going on in the Anfield area, and hopefully we can expand. I think, did you say £75,000 last year? And it'll probably be more this year. So it's in the region, I think, now about £10,000 a month going back into the Anfield community, which is fantastic. And I think Bill Shankly would be proud of that.
Yeah, obviously we deliver a mobile pantry in partnership with Fan Sport and Food Banks and the Greenhouse Education Project. As I said earlier, you know, organisations that share the same ethos and values as us. Fan Support and Food Banks provide the infrastructure. The Greenhouse Project recruits all the volunteers, so we have between 15 and 20 volunteers every Thursday. And we, Spirit of Shankly, basically help fund the food that's provided. The Fan Sport and Food Bank Constitution, basically, which I'm part of Fan Sport and Food Banks as well, says that basically there needs to be 2 members of Spirit of Shankly on the board and 2 from Everton. Used to be the Blue Union, but that's gone. So there's me and the Right Honourable Ian Byrne from the red side, SOS, and then there's Robbie Daniels and Dave Kelly from the blue side. I've said there about mode of operation. One of the key things that we want to try and do is destigmatise food poverty. One of the issues is that when you refer to a food bank, you're given a little shitty, you go to a like horrible little building and you're given a box of food, and you know it's very impersonal, and we don't do any means checking. People literally just come along, basically show their address, and that's it. We don't ask basically whether you work and whether you're not working, what you're doing. The way we feel about it is that if people need to access a service like that, you know, it takes a little bit of courage just to come along and do it. And it was interesting because we did we worked with John Moores University and an organisation called Carnarvon, basically to do some evaluation around the pantries. And 30% of people basically said they didn't just come for food, they came for the sense of community. People who visited to the pantry will see we have music playing, we've ran art clubs, we have different organisations that come along, as I said, you know, the NHS, we've had, I haven't got my glasses so I can't, this thing is that tiny. We've had the NHS, we've had Amnesty International, we've had all sorts of different organisations, and they provide different services basically to the to our members basically who use the pantry. Oh, oh, wait, all right, okay, yeah. One of the things that Liverpool under-18s contacted me and asked, they want to keep their young people grounded, which I think is a brilliant idea. And because what they said is because it's, you know, basically they're in a bubble, like everything's provided for them, so they want to introduce them to the real world. So they said, could they come along and volunteer? So I said, yeah, absolutely, you know, so, and I've got to say, right, we had them last year for, I think it was a 6 to 8 week period leading up to Christmas. And every one of them was an absolute gentleman. They were really good. They did everything that was asked of them. Yeah, they were an absolute pleasure. Trainer Only was there, Jaden Dans. I gave them all a Support and Believe t-shirt and a Shankly badge and a pen, like, so they don't forget who we are. Although some of the players are Man U fans, I've got to say, and Everton fans, so they say I'm not having that. I don't know what else I've said there. Like, but oh yeah, there's loads of other community work that goes on as well. Like Peter mentioned about the Christmas dinner last year, and I've got to give a shout out to John Pearman, who's sitting over there, read all over the land. Who was it who was talking? Kevin Keegan, yeah, and raised £4,000 and gave it to us basically. So that basically paid for the whole day. Like, so thanks to John and all his team. You know, we provided, when Spellow Lane Library, you know, the terrible violence that happened during the summer, you know, we put money into Spellow Lane Library. We put stuff into Zoe's place. We put 5,000 into that. And obviously had a Just Giving page. And there's all sorts of other things that we try to do, like support the likes of Sean Cox and different things like that. And there's so many, and ex-players who've fallen on harder times, and sometimes that goes missing in the big projects that we do. But it's important for when people approach us that if we can, you know, it takes a lot to ask for help. So if we can help, you know, why wouldn't you? And that's what we try to do. Oh yeah, Bobby Graham's statue, yeah. We went up, we were fortunate enough basically to go up to Glenbook. We took 4 football teams with us to play 4 Scottish teams, and the four Liverpool teams finished first, second, third and fourth, which is nice. But Bobby Graham was there, ex-Liverpool player, you know, like, and he's not in great shape, to be honest, like, and each particular player or each team got a Shankly Cup, didn't he? And Bobby reached out and said, you know, could I have one? You know, what, Shankly was my hero, and obviously we said, yeah, absolutely, of course. So he's had a Shankly Cup and Shankly statue, yeah. So the Glenbook thing's absolutely brilliant, and all credit to Steve Monaghan and John Nicholson and a couple of other lads who basically organised this. It was the first time I'd visited, and I was blown away by the whole day, and it was just brilliant to see the young people mixing together and the different community groups coming together. So it's a great example again of people working together to do something that's good. And the Shankly Cup's actually going to be in Liverpool this year. Like, and it's getting expanded, so we're inviting, Mono's got this idea of inviting teams from other countries. So it should be a good tournament. So that's it from me, really. So
Yeah, we will come to questions. We've had some questions sent in advance, so some people might actually be here, but we just wanted to make sure we ran through the answers, so I've been tasked with reading some of the questions and the answers. I won't read all of the questions verbatim, because we'll be here all night, but Paul Amana asked us around how we can reach out to ensure the membership in the committee and the structure is reflective of the wider fan base, and I think some of the stuff George showed before as an, you know, what we're trying to do as an organisation is part of that and building those links. But if there are groups or individuals who think we can do more, you know, please do help us suggest that. But really do, you know, get involved. You might be active in another group. You might kind of think you haven't got the time, but there probably is a way you can play a part and be part of this and have your issues heard as a supporter. You know, make sure you're playing your part in the union. It is genuinely for everyone, and you know, there's different levels at which people can get involved. We're not expecting you to be the chair of the organisation if you do, but really would encourage to, and we're going to try and reach out the other way as George had outlined before. I had quite a few questions around tickets, around qualification criteria for tickets, around where tickets go and the atmosphere and the impact of that. We will feed that back into the club as part of the ongoing conversations. There's not we can promise here about what will change on tickets, but we will. The feedback we've had in those questions from Raspel and others, we will feed back on those as well. People had asked a very specific question about why so few season tickets have been issued, considering the increased attendance. That was largely the decision the club had made when the new Anfield Road was introduced. There were, I think, there were an extra 1,000 season tickets there. You know, I think that is a very real issue for lots of supporters who contact us. There won't be as many season tickets issued en masse anymore, or certainly in the near future with the capacity of Anfield. So, you know, if you're on that waiting list, it will feel like a very long wait. So we are always talking to the club about tickets that come back into the club, making sure if they're season tickets, they go into the season ticket waiting list and what that looks like. There are issues for people about joining that season ticket waiting list. You know, if you're under the age of 35, you've never had a chance to join that season ticket waiting list. What does that mean for you? So it's a big issue for lots of people, but we are talking to them as part of that conversation on ticket and season tickets was a topic people could raise in the most recent survey. So we'll do that. People have spoken about the atmosphere and about things that might change in and around the ground, about how people can get more teenagers and young adults in, and Roy's doing lots of work on that, on the match day experience, so that will feed in. So thanks to Gianni who's written in about that one. And then Paul had also contacted about the COP and the concourse and facilities on there and the TVs showing the game and stuff like that. All things we've raised about, in part, to get people spending time and money in the ground, which hopefully we could then say, well, if you're making money elsewhere, you could lower ticket prices. So, you know, they are kinds of constant things we're flagging with them. Two other very specific questions that people have asked. One, I don't think we have an answer to this, is what is the update on trying to secure the contracts of Trent, Virgil and especially Mo? Gron, how much have we got? How much have we got in the bank, Gron? Probably doesn't even cover Mo's wages for a week, but we'll see. The answer is we have no update. And like you, we're all waiting to see what happens there. And obviously, Peter Carney had contacted us. Lots of people know Peter. There was a recent issue around some Hillsborough kind of mementos being in goodie bags in the corporate lounge at the Anfield Road. As far as we're aware, and Peter's asked what's come of the review of that, the club haven't reported back to us on the review of that, but they have reviewed it or are reviewing it, but have stopped them being given out. So we will get an answer for you, Peter, if you are watching this, and come back to you by an email on that. But we do have a little space for some questions before Kieran presents to us, if people want to stick their hand up and someone comes round with the mic. You might not want to, you didn't want to hear from us, you all just came for Kieran Maguire and a pint, didn't you? Kieran Maguire, a pint and a piece of pizza and everyone's happy. I'm looking at Helen here, who's organised all of this, and she won't want me to embarrass her by pointing out where she is, but she's thinking, no, shut up, Jay. We're ahead of time now. Let us crack on with that. Final shout for any questions for anything we've said. You'll get a chance after Kieran as well for questions of him. No?
One thing I'd say, yeah, but the atmosphere question, I think has been, you know, it was probably sent in a few weeks ago, but the atmosphere at Anfield the last 2 home games has been absolutely brilliant, hasn't it? So it just shows you that it can happen. It just depends on whether you're top of the league in the Champions League and the league. And you've been on the last show. And you've been drinking, yeah. Well, that's you, George.
Yeah, sound, yeah. Hello, Kieran, are you around?
He's just joining now. He's just about to be let in.
Hello, Kieran. Hello, Kieran. Can you hear us? I'll just introduce him anyway. It's absolutely brilliant that Kieran's given up his time. I don't know whether you've ever listened to any or read any of the stuff that he's done. His knowledge and understanding around football finances is, it's second to none. And obviously, with our issue with ticket prices and stuff like that, like we really thought, basically, if we can get Kieran to come along and talk, that would be really beneficial to give us all a greater understanding of the issues, the financial issues that we face and what the club face. So, without further ado, we've got Kieran Maguire, football finance expert from the University of Liverpool, and he's going to focus on Liverpool FC finances and standing. It's called Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. So, thank you very much, Kieran. Kieran, we can't hear you, mate.
Give us a minute. There we go.
My microphone is on.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, okay, sound.
Cheers, thank you, Kieran.
That's it, that's going to be the clap at the end of it. Right, I'll try and present now. Okay, cool, let's go. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invite. Yeah, my name's Kieran. I've been teaching in Liverpool and Manchester since 1989. I present a football finance podcast with a stand-up comedian, and I think you've made the mistake. You probably thought that you booked the comedian for half an hour, and instead you got the accountancy teacher. So apologies for that in advance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the history of Liverpool FC from a financial point of view, just to show the growth of the club and where the money's come from and how the money's being spent. I think we broadly know how the money's being spent. So let me just try and control this. So I thought to have a start point, I'm going to make it full screen. Is it now full screen? Just been asked to make it full screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you now see, it should say Liverpool Football Club and Athletic Grounds PLC?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sound. So I thought I'd go back to when I first started teaching in Liverpool, which was the 89-90 season, which was a good season for Liverpool FC. And as you may or may not be able to see from the numbers, I appreciate that the slides might not be coming up brilliantly. In that season, Liverpool generated from football £6 million. £6 million is about £115,000 a week. That's for the whole club. That's from TV, that's from sponsorship, that's from ticket sales. And that figure of £6 million has grown and grown and grown. And we can now add effectively 2 zeros to that. And that's due to the success of the Premier League. But the thing is, Liverpool made a profit. So they lived within their means in the late 90s, or sorry, in the late 80s and the early 90s, just as all other clubs did. And yet, if we take the accounts for all the clubs for the most recent season, which is 22-23, as far as the finances are concerned, 19 out of 20 Premier League football clubs lost money. So despite all of the extra money coming into the game, they're not making any profit, and that's due to a variety of reasons, as we will see. So this is sort of the history, and we're back, of course, 2 or 3 owners ago. So what's happened? Where did the money come from? Well, the reason why the Premier League was created was that owners felt that, first of all, they were sharing too much money with the smaller clubs. So by going it alone, we could generate more money. But if you take a look at these figures here, Liverpool made £3 million that year from sponsorship. This is preceding season 2 to the start of the Premier League itself. £3 million. This season, in as far as FSG are concerned, they will be looking for Liverpool to make £250 million. So all of the money's coming in. It's coming in from TV sources. It's coming in from royalties. It's coming in from sponsorship arrangements. So does it have to come from fans to the same extent? Do we have to see that same growth of revenue from fans? I think there is a case for saying that it's not required, and it's down to owners realising that your loyalty which built Liverpool Football Club, along with your predecessors, and that's why I pulled this talk standing on the shoulders of giants, because we all wouldn't be here were it not for the efforts of those generations before us, has meant that you have now become cash on a stick as far as club owners are concerned. And it's not just Liverpool, it's not just Manchester United, it's I've been dealing with Fulham fans today. They've just announced their ticket prices for the home match against Arsenal. And to expect what is ultimately, and which is historically, of course, as we all know, a working class game, to be charging £80–90 to watch 90 minutes of football is absolutely crazy. But that's the situation where we are. So Liverpool has grown and grown and grown. And in 91–92, if you wanted a season ticket, it would cost you £114. So that's around about £8.80. So that's the money that you were paying to watch your beloved team at the start of the Premier League years. Now, I don't know what your season ticket prices are today. Mine's around about £30 for my team, and I think that's okay. But other people are paying far more. I get the cheapest tickets that I can to watch my team. So if we take a look at history of Liverpool, and I showed you in that first slide that in 1989, Liverpool generated £4.5 million. Liverpool's revenue's gone up by a factor of over 100 since the late 80s. Is there anybody in this room whose wages have gone up by a factor of 100 in that same period of time? I suspect not. So it does seem that clubs have been very, very successful at using the broadcasting deals, both domestically and globally, to increase their appeal, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If people want to watch football on telly, let them. If people want to watch that football on telly in the Philippines or the United States or Australia, go for it, absolutely. And if they want to buy the merchandise, well, that's down to them, but as we've seen with the prices, they're going up and up as well. Now, look at these numbers. Since the start of the Premier League, consumer inflation, what we are paying as far as buying a loaf of bread, buying a newspaper, whatever it is, that's gone up by 124%. The Premier League's revenue has gone up by 9,600% since 1990. So the Premier League has been spectacularly successful, Liverpool included, and the other clubs in the Premier League included as well, in terms of their ability to get extra money coming into the game. Does that extra money have to come from you? That's a separate argument. And I think it's an argument which is difficult to justify, because football's not like any other product. Liverpool FC are a monopoly supplier. And if I talk to economists, they say, well, they're not a monopoly supplier. There's lots of other football clubs that you can go and watch. But those economists don't understand football. If I've got here, I'm a big fan of Apple products. So I've got an Apple computer, I've got an Apple Watch, I've got an Apple phone, an iPhone, and an iPad, and I've got the full works. I've got 2 Apple Pencils. I'm a real Apple geek. But if Samsung phone me up and say, Kieran, tell you what, we'll give you a Samsung Galaxy and a Samsung headphones and a Samsung iPad and a Samsung laptop, and we'll give it to you for free for the next 5 years. If you give up Apple, I'll give it up like a shot. If Jim Ratcliffe phones you up as Liverpool fans and says, look, we need some noise, we need some passion at Old Trafford. What we're going to ask you to do is to stop supporting Liverpool, and don't care what it's costing you, I'm going to offer you a free season ticket at Old Trafford for the rest of your life. How many people are going to take up that offer? Can you see, and we've got this unique relationship. You've got that monopoly relationship between a football fan and the football club. It's a cradle to grave labour of love, which brings joy which is unparalleled and misery at times which is unparalleled, but there is nothing more emotional than being at a football match, which is why we go there, and that's why we want to go there, and we want to go there again, and we want to bring our kids there. And I'd always argue that if you, as a Liverpool fan, or me as the fan of the club that I support, doesn't matter what the club is, if you were to list out the top 10 moments of your life, at least half a dozen of them would involve being at Anfield or being at an iconic match which you can remember as an away fan, or a cup final, whatever it's going to be. And that's that unique relationship. And clubs are exploiting that. Clubs are monetizing that. They are turning your loyalty and the loyalty of all us football fans into cash. I went back to those figures from 1990, and I thought, well, where's the money gone to? And we all know that football is a talent game, and talent follows the money, and footballers are very well remunerated. But if we go back to when Liverpool won the Old League Division 1, the predecessor of the Premier League, in that season, including bonuses for winning the league, Liverpool's total wage bill was £5 million. Now that's about £95,000 a week. That's for the whole squad, that's for the manager, that's for the executives, that's for the support staff and everybody. And the highest paid person in Liverpool in the season 1989-90 was earning £270,000 for the year, because in those days they used to list out the wages. I suspect it was Kenny. He'll probably tell you if Barnsley was there or somebody was earning more. But as you can see, there were only, I think, 11 people at the club that were earning more than £100,000 a year, let alone £100,000 a week. So what we have seen over the course of the last 20 to 30 years is the money's come into the game, and it's gone straight out of the game as well in the form of player wages. And I'll always defend a player to generate as much money as they can. Nobody forces the club to put a contract in front of them. So it's down to the clubs to control those costs, and they're not very good at doing that. If we take a look at the average wage at Liverpool, I worked out in that 89-90 season, the average weekly wage was £2,300. By the time we got to 2023, that average weekly wage was £173,000. So it's gone up and up and up, and it leaves us with a dilemma. You want your best players to stay. You want to recruit the best players, and if other clubs are paying wages at that level, if you don't match those wages, you lose the players. So it is a challenge for a club. There doesn't seem to be a solution, because if you have a wage cap, if you say, let's go and cap wages at £100,000 a week, what happens is that those players go to Italy, or they go to Spain, or they go to another country where they don't have wage caps. And we've seen this in other sports. We've seen this in rugby union, because we now got a wage cap as far as rugby is concerned. So it is a problem. And as we can see here, wages have gone up by 7,000% since 1990, during a time when prices have just about doubled and a bit. So players have been the biggest beneficiaries of all the extra money coming in, but it's your money that's coming in which is now funding those increased levels of wages. So does football have a problem today? Because if you go back to the last decade, if you think about that period, 2010 to 2020, the price rises as far as your season tickets were concerned, they didn't tend to be every year. There were price freezes, and I know, I hate Manchester United as much, if probably not, probably more than some of the people in this room. You might find that surprising, but my wife's ex-husband worked at Manchester United, so I've got good reason to loathe the particular club. And my first date with her, I took her to Hartlepool. I said, "Do you like football?" She said, "Yes." So I took her to Hartlepool away, thinking I'd impress her, not realising that the previous match she'd been to had been the Champions League final in Barcelona, or somewhere like that. We managed the second date, but it was hard work. So I've always had a loathing of Manchester United ever since. So what's the problem as far as the football finances are concerned? The reason why they are putting up the prices, or the excuses that the owners are making in terms of putting up the prices, is that football generates money from three sources. It gets the money from the TV deals. But here we've got a problem. The TV companies are not willing to pay any more money. Sky will be paying no more money in 2029 than they did in 2017. So you've got 12 years of flatlining as far as the money coming in is concerned, and yet during that period, wages are going up, transfer fees are going up, transport costs are going up. I'm not saying it's right, but this is what you're going to be getting from the clubs. The second form of income is from sponsors. Now, there's a little bit more money to be generated from sponsors, but there's only so much room on a shirt. And we've seen some clubs, if you take a look at what's happened at the Etihad and Manchester City, and there they've now got double height sponsorship deals on the advertising hoardings, because they don't seem to need the fans there, or they can't get the fans there, or whatever it's going to be. Is that going to happen at Anfield? Is that going to happen at other grounds where effectively fans are going to be replaced by advertising because the advertising is more valuable? That's a function of the fact that they're finding it more and more difficult to get the money from the sponsors. So as far as the owners are concerned, if you're getting no more money from the TV deal, if you're struggling to get more money from sponsors, who are they going to target? They're going to target you, because they know that no matter how good or bad a performance, no matter how crap the weather, no matter how crap the food, no matter how long it took you to get home after a match, you're still going to be there the following week. I remember being at a away match watching my team at Huddersfield. Our goalkeeper got sent off in the 5th minute. We lost 7-1. And I walked away saying, "That's it, I'm never going again." And the following Saturday I'm at Southend, because you can't stop. It's an addiction. It's the most addictive love on the planet, the relationship between a football fan and a football club. So as far as the clubs are concerned, we know, rightly or wrongly, that Liverpool could sell 500,000 tickets for an individual match. So therefore they're going to argue that we're going to start to sell tickets to the highest bidder, and they're going to try to replace season ticket holders with individual match day fans. And I'm not going to criticise the people who come from elsewhere to watch Liverpool. I can understand the appeal. It's absolutely, the football they play, the history, the heritage, the magnificence of the city. The fact that I commute 400 miles to and from home to go and work in Liverpool because I've got an affection for the city. I just happen to live down here to be close to my grandchildren, who my wife helping to bring up. So that's what's happening, and they're targeting. And what they're going to do is they're going to replace these people, the people that were here on the COP in the 80s, with the Prawn Sandwich Brigade, because the Prawn Sandwich Brigade are willing to pay the higher prices. And you've only got to look at a match at Wembley, and you think of the second half. Whenever a match kicks off, there's nobody on the screen. There's no fans watching the match as they pan across from the tip. And the reason for that is that the hospitality seats, which are based on the halfway line, well, they're still in there. They're still eating their prawn sandwiches. They're still comparing their wines and so on. They're not football fans in the historic and heritage way that I suspect the vast majority of people on this call have been brought up. So how much is it costing us as fans? So as part of the exercise, when I was asked to do this, I thought I'd go and research, because I've got to deal in facts. I'm in court in 2 weeks on a football case, and to stop myself from being slaughtered by a KC, I've got to make sure that my facts are correct. It's not to do with this, but ultimately, as somebody that teaches numbers are very, very persuasive. So I went into the 22-23 accounts of the Big Six, for want of a better phrase. I looked at the number of people that attended to see them in the season. I looked at the total match day income. I looked at the number of matches. And what we've seen is that there's been an increase of 800%. So during that period of time when prices have just over doubled, match day income has increased by 800%. And these are the figures that fans are paying on average to watch the Big Six teams. Now, if you take a look at the top three, there's a London premium. Why are Chelsea getting an average of £91.77? Well, first of all, it's a small ground. The argument, that Chelsea's a small club in my view, but that's a separate discussion to be had. They're in London, they're in the swanky part of London, they've got relatively few match day tickets to sell, and they've got quite a big hospitality sector. So they're able to generate. If you take a look at Liverpool's prices, an average of just under £71, and this is before the prices went up, of course, to 24, 25. It is painful, it is sizable. A lot of that average, you might be saying, well, hold on, I'm not paying that much, I don't like what I'm paying. But remember, that takes into account those people who are in the boxes, who are in hospitality seats as well. Manchester City, for all the faults, and there are many reasons, we could have a separate 2-hour discussion for the things that are questionable about some of the things in respect of Manchester City. What the owners have done is that they've absorbed the losses that the club made by making the opportunity to watch that team. And I lived in Manchester for 40 years before I moved again. I used to go to the Etihad when I wanted a quiet afternoon and watch them, and the prices were always low. But that's because they were trying to build up a fan base at the time. So I thought I'd try to put these figures into some form of financial context. In 1990, when I started doing the research for this, the cost of a pint was £1.21. I don't drink alcohol, so you can call me out if these figures are wrong. The average cost, according to the government by 2023, is £4.57. But if pint prices had matched the rise in ticket price inflation, you'd be paying £9.73 for a pint. If beer prices had matched the amount of money coming into football in terms of its revenue, and therefore going through into wages, you'd be paying £104 for a pint. So that's how quickly footballers' wages have risen compared to what we are paying as regular Joes and Josephs and punters and so on. If we compared the money going into football itself, your price of a pint would be £132. So the money has come into the game. Yes, the players have been the significant beneficiaries, but I would argue that given that the clubs have got so much more money coming in, why target fans? Because fans have come, your fans who are from L4, we know that Liverpool is not a city of great wealth. Why are we trying to target what wealth we have? And we often talk about football being the most important of the unimportant things in life. Yes, we've got to put a roof over our head. Yes, we've got to go and feed the family. Yes, we've got to clothe the family. But after that, we all make sacrifices to watch football. We all turn down the opportunity to do other things to watch football. And it now seems that the clubs are targeting us as those consumers to generate the money to allow the billionaires to live a lifestyle which is already quite good for them. So who have been the biggest winners in terms of Liverpool Football Club? Well, in terms of what we've seen, in 2010, Fenway Sports Group bought Liverpool Football Club for £300 million. Most recent value of Liverpool Football Club was £4 billion. Now, a lot of that is down to the way that they run the club, and as business people, I've got nothing but admiration for them. They're very smart financiers. They're very smart analysts. I've spoken to the likes of Ian Graham. I've got Ian Graham, who used to be the head of research. I'm actually meeting Ian in Belgium. We're doing a talk together for the Belgian Football League on Monday. But given that they are already billionaires, given that the club is worth £4 billion, is there any need to target you as loyal fans who it's your forefathers and it's your love and affection for the club which has built their value? Is there any need for them to target you in trying to get more money out of you? So that is my analysis as an external party to where we are today. And I think, let me try and get out of this. Stop sharing. Are you now seeing me? Am I stopped sharing? So that was sort of the basis of my analysis as to where we've managed to get in respect of Liverpool's finances. And I think you'd said that there was going to be a Q&A.
Yeah, we'll ask people now, Kieran, for any questions, if that's all right. So, anyone got any questions for Kieran? If no one puts their hand up now, you've definitely all come for the free pint. We have got some already, but does anyone want to ask Kieran a question or ask him about something he said? Sorry, George.
Hi, Kieran. Thank you very much for that. Fantastic. The thing I don't understand is all that money's come into the game. It appears none of the football clubs make any money, but the values are increasing all the time. And you've said John Henry and his cohorts are incredibly smart, and I can see that their values increase from 300 million to 4 billion. So great. But why are new people still coming in, and why don't any of them try to make any money? None of the clubs make any money, so why don't they actually try to make money? And therefore, if you're not trying to make any money, why are you bothered about screwing us over ticket prices?
Well, they are trying to make money through a variety of ways. If you take a look at Project Big Picture, what would have happened there would be that control of the domestic game would have been passed across to 6 clubs, to the whole of the 92. They would have introduced much more strenuous wage controls. If you take a look at Super League and John Henry, the Glazers, the owners of Arsenal, Manchester City, Chelsea and Real Madrid and so on, those were all the clubs behind it. That's how they were trying to make money, to take control totally of the European game. The reason why the values of football clubs are going up is because people think that the owners are now going to squeeze the fans more and more in terms of what you'll be prepared to pay for tickets. We've already seen one of the Liverpool owners talk about hosting matches overseas, and this is the way that the argument will go. John Henry has said, "Oh no," and the way that it works is as follows: is that they get one person to suggest, "Let's do Liverpool playing matches in New York," and they read the room. They say, "Right, they're hostile." Okay, the other owner will then say, "Oh, well, it's not such a good idea. We'll turn it down." What will happen next time? And this is the way it's going to develop. La Liga is going to start playing matches in New York, and when the La Liga clubs say we're getting £8 to £10 million a match from hosting a match in New York, and Liverpool are saying we've only got to 4 or 5 million, the argument that will be put forward: we don't want to play in New York, but we've got to do it because otherwise we won't be able to be competitive with La Liga. And all of a sudden, then the next time the match isn't in New York, it's in Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan's willing to pay £15 million a match. And then you've got Riyadh willing to pay £25 million a match to host a game. And instead of having 19 games taking place at Anfield in a season, you've got 18, then it'll be 17, then it'll be 16, and then it'll probably be by the end of the 2030s, half the games will be at home and half the games will be on the road. So they see different ways of making money. They're also convinced that they'll be able to sell matches via headsets. These three-dimensional headsets, they are convinced that there's a market for those. So they've listened to the presentations from Mark Zuckerberg and people at Meta and places like this, and they're convinced that the money that they make from match day is going to expand, because you can only get 61,000 people into Anfield, but if we can get an Anfield experience into 500,000 headsets, and when you're going to charge them $30 or $40 a time, then there's huge increases in revenue, and that's where future money is going to come from, and that's how it's being sold to investors.
Kieran, your explanation of they will say, well, we don't want to do this, but they're doing it, so we've got to keep up with them, literally sounded like I was in the room with people from Liverpool or the Premier League all over again, because that is exactly what they do, and that's well, it's lovely to see it laid out like that. We've had a question someone submitted online, Kieran.
Yep.
Do fans need to accept that there's a trade-off that between success and having cheaper tickets and a traditional match day atmosphere, or can you have both in the Premier League?
I think that's a brilliant question. Yes, there has to be a trade-off to an extent, but you don't have to increase prices by 10% or 20%. You can still increase prices by 2 or 3. Why not commit for the rest of this decade? We will not increase prices by more than the rate of inflation as far as the COP is concerned, because the COP is the lungs of Anfield. You know that, and I know that. I'm a Brighton fan. I saw the difference 10 days ago as far as what happened in the second half was concerned. So I think what you can say is that we are going to have the prawn sandwich brigade, and they've got to accept they're going to have to go and pay an extra 20% or 25%. But look, it's coming out of their business expenses, so they're not particularly bothered. In terms of what makes Anfield unique, it is the COP, it is that atmosphere, it is that sense of belonging and history and heritage. And my view is that you do your best to preserve that by making sure that those people that built the COP in terms of that environment are able to afford to maintain their position there. As for the rest of the ground, in terms of the hospitality boxes, I'm aware of, I've got a friend at Old Trafford, not a friend, an acquaintance. Yeah, I'll never be a friend if it's Old Trafford. But her seat has gone up from 3,600 to 6,000. So we are seeing the other clubs start to target the more wealthy fans, the corporate fans, and so on. If you take a look at what's happened at Bayern Munich, they say we make as much money from the 10% of corporate seats as we do from the 90% of regular fans. So if we want more money, we're going to target the corporates. It can be done.
Bill?
Hi, Kieran. Thanks very much. Not working. Hello, Kieran. Gareth here. Thanks very much for doing this for us. Wanted to ask you what role you think governing bodies could or should play in ensuring clubs don't exploit loyal fans through their pricing policies.
I think there's a reluctance from government to dictate prices for an individual industry, because if it's not right in football, then should government be getting involved in, what happens if you're a music fan? And I'm a huge music fan, and the price of going to a gig has certainly rocketed up higher. Should that industry be targeted? I think that what we've got at present in terms of the proposed legislation is looking at non-price issues as far as fans are concerned. So making sure that clubs don't relocate to the highest bidder, to make sure that you're still playing in a red shirt in 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, and so on. And that's what we've got in the legislation. I think there would be a huge backlash, not just from the club owners themselves, but I think more importantly from FIFA. Now, FIFA is a loathsome organisation in many ways, but it does have this government cannot interfere in football. And what I think you would have would be a legal challenge from clubs and a legal challenge from FIFA if the government tried to limit price rises for individual tickets or season tickets.
And what about collective fan action instead of regulatory in that sense then? Because obviously we do have the £30 away cap in the Premier League, which was a result of fan collective action. What about something like that, but for home tickets?
I think the victory on away tickets is fantastic. And again, I'd sort of refer you to what we're seeing at Fulham. You've got people who will be sat 5 yards apart. Some will be paying £30 as an away fan, and others will be paying £90 as a home fan, and they'll be getting exactly the same experience because they're 5 yards apart. I don't think the FSA feels that this is a battle that they can win. And also, we've got a further complication, is again, the club owners have got some very neat excuses. They will say, if we limit ticket prices to home fans in terms of prices, then we will be in breach of PSR, and therefore we run the risk of points deductions. And even if we change the rules domestically, we've still got to go and qualify for UEFA's PSR rules or the equivalent of them, and we will fail. So they're using PSR, they're using what's happening in the Liga in terms of international matches as their excuse to continue to put up prices for regular fans.
Cheers. Any others?
Cheers, Jay. Kieran, just further to what Gareth mentioned, we've been in some discussions with Liverpool Football Club over sponsoring stands, whether it be the new stand, and maybe ring fencing that money for some price reductions within the stadium. We're getting a bit of pushback on that. Could you tell us any insights into possibly why? Because if it was, say, I'll pull a figure out there, 10 million a season, whether it was the McDonald's up at Anfield Road, surely that's win-win.
I think there is a case. I'm not sure how much value there is in an individual stand, and neither are the sponsors. And you've only got to look to see what's happened at Spurs. Spurs were looking to name their new stadium, and they've been in contact with some very, very big global organisations. And every time they got close to a deal, Spurs would move the goalposts and they tried to charge a bit more. So that's why that deal's never gone through. But that's looking at a sort of probably a total naming rights deal somewhere in the region of 20 to 25 million for the stadium naming rights. Individual stands, I think, are more complicated, because how much reference do individual stands get in the media? You know, it's especially, would you be willing to sacrifice the name of the Kop for it to be the McDonald's stand? Because nobody would call it the McDonald's stand. Everybody would still call it the Kop, because that's part of your history and heritage and everybody's affection as far as the club is concerned. So when I've spoken to people sort of on the corporate partner side, they've always said that there's not actually as much money in naming rights, certainly for individual stands, and sometimes for stadiums as well. Because if you're building a new stadium, then you might be okay. But you know, I know that Brighton's deal with Amex is worth 100 million over 11 years, and that includes the front of shirt. So the stadium naming rights themselves are probably worth no more than 2 million a year, and that's for a brand new stadium. If you've got an existing stadium, it always will be called Anfield. It won't be called the Kia Anfield or the Nike Anfield as far as you're concerned as fans, and therefore that doesn't have great value from the sponsor's point of view. If you look to see what's happened at Bolton started off, and I still call it the Reebok, and my mates still call it the Reebok, and when I go to Coventry I call it the Rico. The fact that it's now the Coventry Building Society Stadium, nobody calls it that, and as a result the value for the sponsors is really low. Bolton Stadium's now called the Tough Sheet Stadium, and they are paying buttons for that. So unfortunately there's not that much money in the value of the stadium, unless you move to a new stadium.
Anyone else got anything they want to ask? One of you.
Hi, Kieran. Thanks very much for that. Yeah, just speaking specifically on Liverpool there, I think we've heard a lot from the club and the media team about the "this means more" idea. And you talk there about the idea from the club that they can continue to squeeze us because we're addicted to the club, to go into the experience, and they think that they can continue to do that. But then on the other hand, you talk about the selling of that experience to others around the globe on VR headsets. It seems to me a bit of a dichotomy that they want to squeeze out, or they are squeezing out the people that create that culture by going every week, by charging them more, but then want to sell that experience worldwide. Can you talk about, do they just see that that's a short-term issue? When they sell the club, that won't be a problem anymore, or do they just think that they can continue squeezing us? What's their thinking on that? Because to me, it seems completely counterintuitive to get rid of the people that you're marketing about.
I agree with you, but how high is it going to have to go before you give up your season ticket? You will make sacrifices elsewhere in terms of the other non-essential spending within your life, because it is something which is so difficult to give up, and also the club will convince itself that you are replaceable, and I don't think that is the case. As anybody that's been supporting a club all their life is concerned and going as a season ticket holder, we are different to the people who are coming up in the match. It doesn't mean we're better, but we are different because we know the words to the song, because we've been sitting or standing next to that bloke or woman for the last 20 or 30 years, and therefore we act as a collective in terms of the noise and the atmosphere that we make. And I think that is very unique. The clubs will just see the money, because if you take, and I don't think I'm being unduly critical of FSG, but their relationship with American sports is that you can whip up the fans to make some noise. And then you take a look at the prices paid for American franchise sports, they are higher than what we're paying here in the UK to watch football. And they feel that we will fall in line. They think we will moan, they will think that we might do one or two protests, but walking out or refusing to attend, can you imagine the impact it would have if everybody in the COP said, right, this match, we are all walking out after 40 minutes because you're now charging us an extra £40 a season or £400 a season, whatever it's going to be. To actually physically do that has proven to be very difficult. I know at Manchester United, when the fans groups have tried to organise things against the Glazers in terms of walkouts, there's been close to zero pickup. So it takes a huge amount, and I've got nothing but respect for anybody that goes down that route. I've got friends who are Blackpool fans who organised the Not a Penny More campaign against their former owner, Owen Oyston, and they didn't watch their team for some time. I think it was the best part of 2 years, and it was really painful, and they'd be outside Bloomfield Road on a Saturday afternoon. Giving that up is a huge sacrifice, and I'm not sure that the FSG have increased the prices enough. How much would it have to be? Would it have to go up another £500? It's an extra £1,000. They are still convinced that they will find somebody to replace you if you give up your ticket, and that's part of the problem. Because Liverpool is fantastic, it's fantastically popular, and to a certain extent, it's become a victim of its own success in the sense that that success which has been built upon former generations has meant that the club is a global brand with a global fan base who want to get there, and they will quite happily pay the rates that other people are that you might resist.
Thanks. A couple more hands have popped up here.
Thanks, Kieran. Just very quickly, do you ever predict the bubble with regards to Premier League to burst like it did with Serie A in the noughties and the very late 90s?
I don't think so, and the reason for this is that the Premier League has what we sometimes refer to as first mover advantage in building a global fan base. When the Premier League was started in 1992-93, what they did was they went out to all of these other broadcasters around the world and they said, we've got this new competition, we're going to give you the broadcast rights for nothing. And the people in Thailand and the people in the Philippines, and the people in Nigeria and the people in Australia, wherever it's going to be, they said, oh yeah, that's great, because subscription TV was just starting. And then what they found was that the Premier League is not just addictive in the UK, it became addictive globally. And when the Premier League went back 5 years later to renew those broadcast deals, it says, right, we're not going to give them away, we're now going to start charging you money. And the broadcasters paid, and the broadcasters paid again, and the broadcasters paid again, every time they upped their rates. So because the Premier League is broadcast to 190 countries around the world, that's potentially people from 190 countries that want to come to Anfield, that want to come to Old Trafford, that want to come to the Emirates, and so on. And there aren't empty seats. You know, in terms of this level of football, there aren't empty seats. If you drop down to the Championship, I think the bubble has burst to a degree, because we are seeing grounds which are half or less than half full because fans are being priced out. At the Premier League level, there are people who are willing to take your place at higher and higher and higher prices, and the game is becoming gentrified potentially as a result of that. So I don't see that level of popularity for the Premier League declining. We've sucked up and paid higher broadcast fees in terms of our subscriptions for the last 30 years. They've far exceeded inflation. Merchandise prices have far exceeded inflation. Ticket prices have far exceeded inflation. And every year we come back. I think it's going to be a long time before that resistance point is met. And then when it is met, then they'll start flatlining. But what they're trying to do is, how much can we get away with from year to year to year? And we're still there.
Hiya, Kieran. Thanks. It's Damien here. Just an extension of the last couple of questions. I'm torn between being really impressed with your insight and articulation and being thoroughly depressed about the whole direction of all this. So, do you think there's any legs in the fans like coming together? And obviously, it can't be just Liverpool, of sort of like looking at the TV revenues and making some kind of crusade across the fan groups where the TV deals are marketing a certain amount of money to keep the ticket prices down, and then opening up the revenue stream. So, for example, if you're a subscriber to LFC TV Go, is there some way of getting you some kind of access there or something? I think that's the only direction we've got, and we're able to keep the prices down, to keep the atmosphere in the stadium, to keep the real sexy thing about Liverpool and a Champions League night, the colour and all that, instead of them just saying, you can be replaced by anyone, because we can't. And sort of like, do you think that's the only real angle that we've got here, and it's something we should be focused on?
Yeah, I think some form of, I'm a great believer in non-violent direct action. So, getting banners which show exactly what has happened, turning your backs at a particular time, organising mass walkouts. I think that's the type of action which we need to do as a fan base, to show, I was looking at John Henry's wealth. He's worth $6 billion. So John Henry doesn't need more money from you or I. He's been very successful. That's why his wife married him. He's a smart guy. He's
Red card.
Why else would she have married a 76-year-old billionaire? So the only way that you can, I think the only thing that these people respond to is embarrassment and shame. And I think what we've got to try to do is to find collective ways in which that can be expressed.
Kieran?
And, whether that involves, trying to organise a mass boycott or holding hands around the megastore to stop letting people in on particular matches, and just forming a human chain, because it's not, that will embarrass Nike, and considering targeting the sponsors as well.
Kieran, do you think, I think you've said before on your podcast that the owners are working collectively together because they think it's underpriced, the Premier League. Do you think how did you feel with Aston Villa, £97, and they paid it? There was a bit of resistance at the start, but do you think the American owners will have seen that and thought, we can do this?
The owners will feel completely vindicated. Chris Hecker, who is the sort of commercial manager stroke director at Villa. And to be fair to the Villa owners, they put in an incredible amount of money into building things up at that club. But they do want a return on their investment, and they will rely on the fact that most of all, Villa fans wanted to see their club play Bayern Munich. And if it's a case between going and not going, then we end up going. And yes, we're unhappy about it. But once the whistle starts, you forget about the price you paid for the ticket, and you do what we've been doing for all of our lives, which is getting behind the team and sharing that collective joy and sometimes misery that goes along with that.
Kieran, it's me, Gareth again. Just one last one. We're going to wrap up now, but we are a supporters organisation, obviously. We've taken our time to come out tonight and in general, do what we do because we believe there is power in collective action. Make us all feel a little bit happier. If we weren't here and the likes of us weren't here, if we didn't have, you know, organisations like us across the land, if we didn't have the Football Supporters Association, would we all be priced out by now anyway? I.e., is there a point to us? Say there is, please.
I think because you do have a dialogue with the club, and I think that there are good people at Liverpool FC, people who are able to communicate that back to the owners, because ultimately it's the owners' decisions in relation to prices. And if they are continuing the narrative that part of what makes Liverpool unique is the spirit of Shankly, both you as an organisation, but on a much broader sphere in terms of what he helped to create, along with his successors and along with the fans and the players and everybody else that goes with it. You are stakeholders in Liverpool FC as an organisation, and therefore your voice should be heard. And I think whilst you can't turn the dial to zero, you can turn the dial down in terms of what they would like to do. Because we've seen what's happened at Spurs and West Ham, where they're targeting their senior ticket holders. The number of season ticket holders at West Ham since that club moved from Upton Park to the London Stadium has gone down by 7,000. They're being replaced by day ticket prices. I think having the dialogue and explaining part of the success of Liverpool comes from the passion of the fans, and those fans have to come from Liverpool, in my view. And I had an argument on social media with somebody recently who says that somebody from Philippines, somebody from New York, somebody from Nairobi has an equal right to attend a match as somebody from L4. I say, well, that's effectively saying that whoever's got the most money has the biggest right, because if you go down that route, then I just dread to think what will happen. So yeah, I do think you should be proud of what you've achieved to date, and you've got to continue the dialogue, and you've got to come up with innovative ways as a collective to make sure that the club will be embarrassed. And you know, embarrassing the owners is one way of doing it, and embarrassing sponsors is a way which I think is we underplay. You know, Standard Chartered, they pay an awful lot of money to have their brand on the face of your football club shirt, on your club shirt. Remember, it's your club. It's not owned by FSG spiritually. It's owned by FSG financially. Target the sponsor, make life awkward for them, and then you might get some support in terms of the sponsor saying, look, you know, we're getting all of this stick. We're getting horrible. I know Manchester United fans, when they were being sponsored by Team Viewer, they went on and started giving them 1-star reviews. So there are things that you can do as a collective and get fans to join in to make the people who are also funding money into the club, to make them squirm, because you're being taken advantage of due to your loyalty. So it can be done.
Brill. Thank you very much, Kieran. Kieran, we really appreciate it. We'll let you get back to enjoy the rest of your night, and no doubt we'll talk to you about tickets or football finances again in the near future. So thank you for your time tonight, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All the best. Have a great season.
Cheers.
Cheers now.
Are there any other questions that people would like to ask the management committee while we're still here? No? This gentleman... I don't know, you need to ask Helen, the secretary, about that. Sorry, that's this gentleman at the back.
Thanks, yeah, I just wanted to ask about, you know, the current football calendar is very congested at the moment, and club coaches across Europe and England and stuff, and also the players are complaining about the amount of matches, and it affects supporters as well. Would there be any benefit maybe getting in touch with the football coaches representative, union representatives, and also maybe the players representatives, and with the FSA and FSE, maybe trying to have an input to the football calendar?
I think there is some merit in that, because I think to myself that, yeah, obviously we've read the players turn around and saying about the fact that it's putting, you know, undue pressure on them, you know, and their bodies and their ability to perform, but also for us as football fans, it's costing us more money because there's more games. Like, and that needs to be taken into consideration as well. So I still definitely think it's worth a question worth asking. Thank you.
Just on that, we, via work, the PFA, one of the affiliated trade unions, and we've had that conversation with them, and the players are really seriously fed up with it, because I think that the consequence of this thing is, I think sometimes people think it's the big players, you know, they earn loads of money, but they get no say as well. And I think that's it. I think what Paul's just said there is we get no say, do we? We don't get to say you don't want more Champions League games, or also if there's more, and it comes, I think, to Kieran's point before, if there's more money coming into it, there might be a trade-off. The players might say, well, okay, we will take not as big a pay rise, but we want a longer break. Might be that we say, well, all right, yeah, you know what, you want to play an extra 2 Champions League games, 3 Champions, sound, okay, do it. But we want to pay less. You're now making an extra 3, 4, 5 million pound extra from a Champions League game at home. You didn't need to put ticket prices up by £1 million kind of thing. So I think there's a trade-off to be had in some of these conversations, but I do know they are really serious, and there's a number of court cases going on where they're taking them to court about who gets to decide the football calendar. There's been the recent case UEFA have had on this, but FIFA are facing a similar challenge about that they essentially decide the footballing calendar, and not that you'd often see the PFA or us on the same side as the Premier League, but I think we are in this one, because they're like, hang on, who put you in charge of deciding when we, you know, our teams or our players have to play in competitions like the Club World Cup that until recently wasn't even finalised. So I think there is a value in that, and that's something we'll pick up.
Okay, is there anything else that anybody would like to say?
Yeah, just a quick one for me. If there's anyone that wants to speak on camera, just after it gets wrapped up, just for the SOS YouTube channel, just talk for a couple of minutes about what it means to be in the fan group and ask you a couple of questions. Nothing too bad, only a couple of minutes. If anyone wants to get on camera, just stick around here after they've wrapped up. Please.
Okay. I'd just like to finish off by saying a massive thank you to the management committee. Basically, I'm privileged, really, basically, to be working with these people, basically, and the great work that they do. I totally recognise it. I hope you do as well. I'd like to say a special thank you to Helen, basically, for organising this as our secretary. But most of all, I want to say a very special thank you for you for coming along this evening, and obviously the people who are online as well. You know, hopefully I've tried to get me point across is we're here for you, we're here to represent you, and basically we need to understand what you think, and basically we need to act basically on what you want us to do, and we appreciate all your support. So thanks for, it's in the middle of nowhere, this place. I was walking around lost before, but thanks for finding it, and yeah, listen, enjoy the rest of the evening, and hopefully see you at the game and stuff. Cheers, thank you.